Hello, and welcome to Recapping with Delora
and Ashley.
Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Recapping Podcast.
Also, rate, review, and subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all the things.
We want to hear your thoughts on the movies and shows we review.
Leave us a comment on Apple Podcasts or our YouTube channel, and we will read them during the show.
Or reach out to us on social media. We love talking all things entertainment and pop culture with you.
Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, Delora.
Hey, Ashley.
We are coming back with another In Conversation, but this actually kicks off the start of a special series we're doing because we hadn't announced it officially on the podcast yet, but we are serving as an advocacy sponsor and media sponsor for this year's Dayton Black Women's Film Festival. We are so
excited.
Oh my God. Like, if you guys don't remember, we had an In Conversation with the wonderful founder, Angelina Mitchell, that dropped last year.
Phenomenal conversation.
But not one of my favorites, absolutely.
Truly.
We said we had to dive in just a little bit deeper this year and go full out and actually become a partner with Angelina in the great work she does with this film festival. So we have to introduce our guest, Miss Selena Burks-Rentschler. Hey, Selena.
Welcome.
Hello, ladies. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
We so appreciate you taking the time.
Have you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, Selena, we will start this off as we do with all of our In Conversations, which is please walk us through the highlights of your career journey thus far as an award-winning documentary director, producer, and screenwriter.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Yes. Well, I have to say that I've been a big lover of film since I was a girl. And I've known since I was 12 that I wanted to work in film. And I didn't know where to start because I didn't see people that looked like me doing the things that I wanted to do, which is direct and produce and be in charge. So I did a little research, and I have to say my career really started when I went to art school and studied photography. And that was just a wonderful experience to have, to understand rule of thirds, understand, just other aspects of composition, and just to be able to capture emotions and just freeze it in time. I just love that. And from there, my teacher, my photography teacher, explained to me that, hey, if you want to study this, you can go to college. And just to back up a little bit, I grew up in foster care, and I did not think of the word college, to be honest. And when she said that to me, it was an amazing revelation. And so I found Wright State, and that they had a film program, and immediately applied, was grateful that I got accepted. And that's where I met Julia Reichert, rest in peace, Julia, who was an amazing documentarian and, Oscar-winning filmmaker with her partner, Steve. And she was the one who really put into my mind that I could make stories, because it was her documentary class, her and Jim Klein, shout out to Jim Klein, who really opened the doors of storytelling through documentary for me. It was a key that just clicked into place. And Julia lent me her mini DV camera, and that is the camera I used to make the film Saving Jackie, which is my first film that I made, documentary short about my mother's drug addiction to crack cocaine and the relationship my sister and I had with her and how that impacted our lives. The first interview I've ever shot made it into the movie. And that was just something that was very special to me. I was able to finish the film at Ohio State University. The Wexner Center Media Center has a residency and artist in residency program that I applied to and was granted access, and it was wonderful. From there, I submitted the film to Sundance and it got accepted. And that just opened up so many doors. And it was just a
Yes.
remarkable experience.
That's amazing.
Wow. That is such an incredible story. And it really highlights the importance of speaking life into people's lives, like situations. That's so important. And so you mentioned photography, and what I know about filmmakers, there's different mediums, right? So what drew you to filmmaking as a creative medium versus continuing your journey into photography or any other type of art?
Well, when I was 12, I had a tough experience where my family was thrown out on the street and we were homeless. And I called for help, and thankfully, my uncle brought me and my sister to my grandmother's house. And there was a movie on TV, and it was Francis Ford Coppola's The Outsiders. And I had
Mm.
never seen it before. And I'm sitting here in my feels, just completely distraught after over just the things that I seen that day were really intense. And watching this film about these young boys, navigate life as hard as it was for them really resonated with me. And at the end of the film, I started crying. It moved me to tears, and it was a cathartic release. And I said to myself, I have to do what that person did, not be in front of the camera. I want to be the person controlling the story. And it was that moment that, like, I was set on fire. I felt like it was a calling that God had put on my heart to chase. And thankfully, I've been attracting things. And, I also did the work too to make sure, like, okay, well, what are the steps that I take? What should I take? And understanding art was really important to me, and developing a language that I could use to express myself was really important. And that's what really put me on fire for film, really. And I just love film. It's such a comforting medium, and I feel like it makes it, and representation is important too. It's like
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
a lot of the things that I love growing up didn't have representation in mind. I mean, I came up in, Reagan's America, going into the Clinton administration. And so, there was a flux in movies, stories being told by that point come the 90s where, studios would invest in Black stories, but it was all white stories that were inspirational to me when I was a kid, because that's what I saw on TV.
Yeah. Well, we've always had to be able to understand and relate to those type of stories, right? And it hasn't always been thought that it would be the inverse. Delora and I literally just recapped number one on the call sheet.
Yes.
And
Phenomenal documentary.
it was so good. But definitely speaking to that era too of like the 90s and those
Yes.
directors and storytellers and filmmakers at that time and what they were able to accomplish. You talking about The Outsiders though, I kept thinking Stay Gold Pony Boy because that's just the line that's in my head from that movie, Ralph Macchio.
And
Um,
speaking of representation, really quick, we talk about it in that particular recap, how it really put things in perspective in terms of like time and progress. And like this representation conversation is relatively new. The fact that Boomerang and Love Jones was one of our first romances for Black love was just so eye-opening, like for me and Ashley as well. And so yeah, it is, being Black in America watching films, we've always been able to empathize with the characters, even though their plight was so much different than ours.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just think that there's been such a shift in, and you know, I have to step back for a second and say, because I'm currently teaching a class on Blaxploitation cinema. And, you know, we talk a lot about representation there and, you know, just the different types of tropes that, Black actors were forced into and being able to be liberated from that during Blaxploitation cinema in the 70s to the mid, I mean, it really went on into the 80s, but the zenith was like 74 of its height. And I just think being able to tell our own stories, as compromising as they may be when you think about, well, you're reinforcing new stereotypes now
Yeah.
versus what you were doing before, but it was still a liberating movement that made people pay attention to Black stories and that our stories matter and our stories make money, our
Yeah.
stories the studio system. I mean, let's go,
Employed Black people who want
and
experience.
Hmm.
Yes.
absolutely. So,
So you're a multi-hyphenate creative, right? You know, director, producer, screenwriter. Is there an aspect of the process that you enjoy most? And what do you find these days that drives you creatively?
oh, I love working with other people. I love collaboration. I also love the isolation of screenwriting. I love that as well. It's hard to pick one, because they have their different merits and their different drawbacks. And I just really find energy actually with interacting with my students and seeing them be on, because I teach at Wright State University. And yeah, I just get energized by the students' ambition and their passion and the drive and the way that they work together. It reminds me of when I was in school and I was so on fire for film back in those days. Not that it's different now. I'm like middle age, so the fire is still there, but it's morphed into something different. It's not the same as when I was in my 20s, to be honest. And that's okay. That's something that I had to come to terms with. Like, oh, I'm evolving and it looks different today, and that's a good thing. But yes, I just love watching film and television and just being fed stories. Just feed me stories all day, every day, because it just helps get me through. It connects me to the outside world, and just it excites me with just the idea of, hey, I'm able to work in this field, and I can tell stories that matter as well. And I think that's just really important.
Who is on your Mount Rushmore of filmmakers?
I love this question. I have to say, and I've really thought about this because I love so many filmmakers. It's hard to narrow it down to a handful, but I have to put Spike Lee up there because
Mm.
he was my first cinematic experience where being in a theater. I saw my mother, I don't know why she did this, but she took me to see Jungle Fever, and I was like, nah. But it just made me hungry for more images. And when I saw School Days shortly after, I was like,
Yes.
my gosh, this is amazing.
Good and bad hair. I'm telling you, I was in college and our Black Student Union put on skits and we did that one, loved it down. Like, I love that movie.
Oh,
Well,
that
they
was
still hold up, right? That's the thing. They still are
Yes.
so culturally relevant
Yes.
today.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And then I would add Stanley Kubrick to my list because I just love his aesthetic as a director. Probably one of my favorite films of his is The Shining.
Mm.
I can watch The Shining every day and not get tired of it because it's just so beautifully shot. It's well directed. I know he was a challenging person to work with on set, but
Hmm.
the result that came out of it is just remarkable to
Do you
me.
love
So,
horror? Sorry, Delora. Do you love
no
horror
worries.
in general? Or is
I
that just specific because you enjoy the artistry of it?
That is a fun question too. I love I do love horror. Like when I think about some of my favorite films like Midsummer, um
Midsummer's insane.
it's insane. I love that kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
what? But I do love the artistry of The Shining as well. You know, again, I don't get bored when I watch it, and I've seen it so many times, but it just never gets old for me.
That's
And
when you
I'd
then
know
like
it's
to
your
ask you a
favorite.
question. Yeah. And what book do you reference when watching a Stanley Kubrick's movie? Like, I just feel like he has so many layers and so
yes.
many I like to think of myself as an intelligent person, but it just goes down, it goes deep with his with his films.
Does it's I took a Kubrick class when I was in undergrad at Wright State, and oh gosh, I have the book still, and I'm sorry I'm blanking on the title,
No
but
worries.
it was called Kubrick was, and I forgot the author's name. And it's a picture of him in middle age. He's balding at the top and he got a full of facial hair and things. But that book was really good to help unlock some of the mystery behind his filmmaking abilities for me.
Mm,
And like I knew like I enjoyed certain films, but I didn't understand the why until I dived in deep into his work, going back to, you know, his some of his first films like The Killing, and just seeing this beautiful black and white film that was just remarkable. So I would put him on the Mount Rushmore. And then I would put, rest in peace, David Lynch up there because I am obsessed with David Lynch, even though I have had conversations with people about his representation in his work. And when representation does appear, sometimes it's not as flattering as it could be, because either he's doing to me, a trope like the Jezebel trope, or he's doing like a mammy trope or something like,
mhm,
there's a couple
mhm.
of things, it's not a lot, but it's a couple of things that, I have to like reconcile myself with the love of the artist, with, the work that he's done, with the truth of representation in film. So, and then lastly, I would put Julie Dash up there just because of Daughters of the Dust, and how influential her cinematic style is on my sensibilities. It's just so poetic and beautiful, the film. And it feels surreal. It doesn't, it's just, it's a beautiful world that she created. And that's something that I want to be able to do in my own work.
I had just
Beautiful.
discovered David Lynch's videos, I guess he did during COVID, where he like just basically said what the weather was like and then like had a sign off. I was like,
Yep.
where have I been? I'm just discovering this and like his, kind of obituary reading from one of the sources I looked at. But it's very, very nice list. Julie, I'll have to look deeper into her work. I always enjoy when we have people come on who share some folks or things going on that I'm not super in the loop on. So I'll have to go do a deep dive on Julie's work.
Yes, absolutely. Because if you haven't seen Daughters of the Dust, it is it is amazing. It's just I'm just so grateful that she made that film. and it's something that I had never seen before. And it was beautiful to see Black people shot beautifully and just on the screen.
Love that. So you've already talked about this a bit in terms of your work with students and the fact that you're a full-time professor at Wright State University, go Raiders, in film production and film theory. What else have you enjoyed in your work and what do you feel like you learn in your time as a professor?
Well, I learn things all the time. And I'm someone who doesn't ever want to plateau in my learning abilities. I feel like there's always room for growth. And, you know, there's just so many experiences to be had that there's just no way I'm going to know everything, because
Hmm.
life is so rich with possibility, and especially when you start connecting with other people. I really have learned just how to improve upon my communication and how I relay information, because they have to give it back to you at some point. I have to assess what they're learning. And if I'm not communicating, if it's not breaking through, then I'm not doing my job. So that has been a wonderful thing for me to learn. And also just being open-minded to other ideas, like other possibilities. Like I may feel like a student can't do one thing, but then the next thing is they'll show me that, hey, I have this solution to this problem that you pointed out to me. Here's my solution. And I'm like, okay, well, let's roll with it. So that has been a wonderful thing to experience.
Have you found that the latest crop of students kind of really take to technology differences that are probably coming up with film production in terms of like how films are shot and all of that? Do they dive deep into like technology advances in film?
Well, it's interesting. Our program is to make sure that the students understand what story is and to learn the basic, like the fundamentals of this is how you purport yourself professionally in the real world once you leave. We have access to some of the latest technology in cameras, and we've been gifted like a grant for another film camera by the camera department in Cincinnati, which is really great for the students because what I've noticed is that they're really drawn to this particular camera over, let's say, something that is newer. It's like they want to learn this particular camera. As far as like post-production work is concerned, from when my day back in the day when I was at Wright State and I was a student in the film program, we didn't have access to nonlinear editing platforms like Adobe Premiere or Avid. We had to learn we had to we had to shoot on film, number one. And then number two, we had to send our film off to a lab, had to go to a post-production house and let somebody else cut the film together for us. Whereas now, you have access right from your laptop to do that,
Yeah.
which I think is fantastic and empowering and saves money too, because shooting on film is expensive, and as is all the lab work that goes along with it. But I feel that they have been really quick to learn the new programs that we're teaching them. I just think that the students are really adept with integrating new skills when it comes to the software platforms that are used in the industry.
That's awesome. Speaking of the industry, I know that you've worked in some feature films such as Carol with Kate Blanchett and Rooney Mara, and Miles Ahead, directed by and starring Don Cheadle. I think that was his directorial debut with features.
Yes.
What's been your experience working on features versus documentaries, and does any project stand out most?
Oh, this is a great question. Yes, I love working on feature films. It is like a factory. Everyone has a specific role. They have to fulfill that role and stay in their lane with that role. And the hours are grueling. I mean, that doesn't sound glamorous, but there is such there. I've been fortunate enough to be on film productions where the camaraderie of the crew is good and strong. And those are the best projects for me to be on, whether the film is something as exciting as Don Cheadle's directorial debut, or if it's, you know, a low budget $1 million film with a first time director that is unknown. If the camaraderie is there, it is worth the ride of that production and the making of that film. And documentary, it depends on the level of film that you're trying to create, just like anything else, just like features, because you can have a documentary crew like, number one on the call sheet. They have like a massive crew. Whereas other films that I've been on have had minimal crew, where it's like, okay, you have your camera operator, the DP, you have your sound mixer, and you have the producer and the director, and that's it. And we're just out in the field, getting B-roll or doing interviews on the spot, in on location. And that's a different type of vibe, but it's still wonderful when even the smallest crews find that connection and have such a good rapport with one another. It makes things so much simpler, and it makes things so much more enjoyable. And I want to work in narrative filmmaking. My plan right now is to I've already developed the script. I'm right now looking for financing for it. I have a producing team working with me, but it will be my directorial debut as a first-time feature film director. And that's what I'm working towards now. But I think I will always love documentary and will continue to work on documentaries. I have a documentary short that I'm in post-production on that I'm wrapping up, and I just love both mediums. I think
Yeah.
they have so much to offer.
Yeah, and you don't have to choose, thankfully, right? Congratulations on this first feature film that you're going to be having come out. Looking forward to checking it
Yes,
out.
yes, yes, cannot wait. I actually, it reminded me, I got a chance to see Ava DuVernay at Black Tech Week in Cincinnati last year. And one of the things that she talked about was being creative with finances and like her, I think she said, not that her mantra was, but she was just reminding herself money is everywhere. Money is everywhere. And you don't have to go through, the traditional ways that the industry is set up because, that can be a hurdle for women and Black women in general. And yeah, it was a great talk. Have you found yourself, you know, doing that when looking for financing for your film?
Yes, I tell myself that it only takes one yes, and that the yes is out there, and it's just a matter of time. And it's, I'm a spiritual person. I believe that it's in God's hands and God's timing, because I've been brought this far. I don't believe that I'm going to be left here. I believe that it'll come to fruition and that there'll be other opportunities after that.
Yes.
It's just a challenge getting over that first hurdle, because I am more mature than, let's say, other peers in the field, where I've been married, I have a kid, you know, I've had a life. And I have to remind myself that it's okay because again, things are going to align the way they need to at the designated time. That's what I believe. And I just, I had a few no's recently when it comes to financing for this project. But I've had encouraging no's where they say, this is a really great project. I see the vision of the director. Unfortunately, we have another project like this on our slate right now, and we cannot pursue this with you. So, and then I've had some feedback where, we think it's a good project, but come back to us when you have some financing and then we'll work something out on the distribution side. So I've had it's been a mixed bag and it's been an interesting process because I've never been through this before. But I remain encouraged, and that's just the vibe that I have to go with. And I believe in the story, and I just have to keep fighting for it and keep hanging in there.
Throwing
I
those
love
good
that.
vibes your way as well for
Absolutely.
all your needs.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Switching gears a little bit, what's your favorite movie or TV show and why?
Oh, I love so many different things.
That's what we always say.
Same.
It's hard.
Same. I got to put them in genres, honestly, like
Exactly.
animation, action, historical.
Yes, yes, yes. Because right now I'm in animation world right now. Like my son loves, he's gonna be so mad that I said this, but he loves anime.
Oh,
And
it's very
I was
popular.
gonna say
Very popular.
it is more cool these days than it's ever been, if that gives him
Correct.
any solace. Michael B. Jordan is a huge fan of anime, you
So
know.
is Meg the Stallion.
Exactly. You go to somebody's, there actually a recent event I went to, or actually a recent work trip I went on, there was a whole anime conference going on next door. So every day in the lobby, you saw all the people in their costumes. It's popping.
It's
it,
very popular. And I was obsessed with Blue Eye Samurai from last year. So good. When season two? That is the question.
oh, I gotta check that out. I have like a running list now from it, and I'm currently watching Attack on Titan. And
Ooh, I heard
that's
good things about that one.
yes, yes. I'm in the fourth season so far. And I mean, I'll be honest with you. I've seen the film in theaters when it had a special release in February. We drove down to Cincinnati to go see it, and it was a lot of fun. But my favorite, I don't have a favorite movie because I have several favorite movies.
Yeah.
Um, oh my gosh, but I have to say the TV show that I love so much is the HBO's The Watchmen, starring
Yes, with
Yes.
Regina King.
Yes.
Yes.
So good.
my gosh, it's just I'm a fan of the graphic novel The Watchmen.
Yep.
So to see the adaptation, the way that they did it, and I mean, it was nothing like I've ever seen before. And I was completely enthralled with it.
Where
And
is Yaya? Why is he not working more? That's what I want to know.
Maybe
Is he
he's relaxing somewhere for a little bit.
yeah,
I side-eye Don Johnson to this day, if I'm honest.
working?
listen, he's been playing some roles lately.
Yes,
Yes, we
because we
did
did
Rebel
Rebel
Ridge.
Ridge.
Yep.
Lord.
Yeah, that's great. But yeah, that's probably the one show. Well, I love The Watchmen because I love Regina King's performance. And I feel
Yes.
that she deserves tons and tons of flowers for that role.
Yes.
And it was just, again, something that I've never seen before. And the production value was stellar, of course. And I just love the way the story told, how the story unfolded as the series went on. It was really good.
Yeah, HBO is always like, we got a budget. But also to me, it put the movie to shame because I was like, I
By a
remember when
long
the
shot.
movie came out, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, you know, da, da, da. And then the show just blew me away.
Yes, it
Yep,
did.
it
Same.
sure did. Yeah. I it reminded me of our long lost, I say our as in me and one of our other guests, Lovecraft Country is like these stellar seasons of like these phenomenal led by Black people shows on HBO, but you only get one season. It's like, ah!
Oh my gosh, it's heartbreaking. I mean, I remember when the showrunner, she would put out on Twitter like this map she was working on for the second season of Lovecraft, where
Alicia Green.
yes, thank you. Thank you. And it's just, I feel robbed that she didn't get an opportunity to continue that vision. It's really a shame that she hasn't had an opportunity to find a home, another home for the show. I wonder what she's working on because she's been quiet lately.
Yeah. I'm gonna watch that show someday. I
Super
need
talented.
somebody to come hold my hand because I don't like
You'll be
horror.
fine. The I Am episode, life changing.
Yeah, I just, you know, Delora knows this. Our podcast audience knows this. I'm a scaredy cat, but you know who made me feel better recently was Michael B. Jordan, as they've been doing the promo for Sinners, and he was like, "Yo, I just don't enjoy being scared," and I was like, "Same, Michael, like same." But
Mhm.
just come hold my hand, and then maybe I'll make it through. Because I've tried to give From a chance because everybody was like, "Oh my God, you have to watch From." Da 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 da. Selena, I watched maybe one or two episodes, forced to watch. I had nightmares and stopped immediately. Like I just horror is not my genre, but I love that the Ryan Coogler's and Jordan
Mhm.
Peele are in their horror bag, right? So I want to support those Black filmmakers in the genre. So I will still, maybe I'll just buy tickets to the movies, and if I can't make it, I can't make it. But you know, I love that it is something and it is a genre that we have been thriving in. I do love that.
Same, absolutely. Yes.
So, getting back to your work, and you already talked about your documentary Saving Jackie at the Black Film Festival this year, Dayton Black Women's Film Festival this year. It's the 20th anniversary screening of this film. And
Wonderful.
you already talked about the personal story that it is for you, right? It's about you and your sister's relationship with your mother. Tell us a bit more about like the inspiration for this film and the process of making it.
Sure. At the time, back when I was a junior at Wright State University's film program, I was still estranged from my mother because I went into foster care and I aged out the system. I had to leave my sister. She aged out the system. And so we were estranged from our family. And I was having just a really tough time with one of my classes at school. And I called my foster mother. She wasn't at home. I called my grandmother. She wasn't at home. I called all these people. And then I decided to give my mother a call. And she picked up the phone. And she was like, "What's wrong? I can hear it in your voice." And we just started a conversation. And so from that moment on, I'm like, well, maybe I should give this lady a chance again because the last time we were together, it ended on a sour note. It was really unfortunate. But I got to know her all over again. And one of the things that she was saying was that she was trying to get herself together. She was like, "I'm trying to save myself. I'm trying to save Jackie." And when she said that, it's something in me clicked. And the idea of maybe I can help empower my mother through her recovery from drug addiction. And can document it and just show, because I would get so annoyed with media and the portrayal of addicts in film and television because they always made them a punchline. They just completely stripped them of the humanity. And I saw my mother as a full blood, human, complex, emotions, all these things. And so I wanted to put a face to something that was horrible that happened in, the 80s with, Reagan era, infiltrating drugs into our communities. I wanted to show like this impacts real people
Yeah.
and stories. There's something to learn from this. And so it took a little convincing. I did an audio interview of my mother to get her warmed up. And then I borrowed the camera from Julia Reichert and went to the park with her. I said, just sit here, you're just having a conversation with me. I didn't have any lights. I didn't have any sound. I just had the camera. That's all I had. And I got real close to her. And I made sure, like, okay, well, we can hear her, even though there's traffic behind her, we can still hear her voice. And that, like I said earlier, that interview made it into the film. And that was just the start. It took me years to finish it. She ended up getting diagnosed with multiple sclerosis during the filming of it. And then unfortunately, she passed away. And I had all this footage of her. I didn't know what to do, but I didn't sit on it long. Something told me just to get back up and you have to finish this film. And the film ended up being about forgiveness and love and reconciliation, whereas the film before it was getting a little messy. It wasn't what I set out to do. Her death completely changed the trajectory of the story that I was trying to tell. And, I'm just so fortunate that people responded to it because I was vulnerable. I put myself out there and I didn't care. I've been able to show this film to foster care agencies, drug rehabilitation centers. I've been to symposiums and universities. I've been able to use this film to do good. And I feel like it's a good way to honor my mother's legacy and her life. And I just can't believe it's been 20 years. It's just, oh, the time has flown, literally. It's crazy.
That's beautiful. How did your film affect your relationship with your family and your art?
I was young and I was just going on octane fuel. Like I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have like, I just had this idea of I want to save my mom. That was the goal. And I interviewed other family members. They were a bit resident at first. They were like, I don't know about this. But I was persistent and I said, listen, this isn't out here to make you look bad. This isn't, I'm not trying to put our business out in the street in a way that's demeaning to the family. There are other people out there who went through what I went through and I want to reach them, you know. I want to save my mom and I want to reach those people. And my dad, rest his soul, he really opened that up for me where his participation made a difference. And his interview is in there. And I'm just so grateful that they believed in me because my dad was the person who told me about Sundance. He said, there's this film festival out in Utah where
Wow.
they like Black women films and you can get your stuff seen out there, shown out there. And then I got accepted to Sundance and I was just so grateful. I got a bunch of swag while I was out there, and I had a coat that had Sundance on there and the year of it. And I gave it to my dad, and just to thank him, like, thank you so much for telling me about this because now I'm living it. The thing that you said, I'm living. And he cried. It was beautiful.
Mm.
It
How
was
about
beautiful.
your sister? How's your sister?
Oh, my sister. Oh, that's my best friend right there. She was a bit hesitant to do the film at first, but I explained to her what my intent was, and she trusts me. And I don't take that lightly. I honor that dearly. And I wanted people to fall in love with her because I love her so much. And that's one of the things I feel like I succeeded in the film because people always ask about her after her screening. How is your sister?
Yeah.
She's a likable character. And she's doing great. I mean, my sister now is married with 3 kids. She just had a baby.
Aw.
That's so
Doing great.
sweet.
Yeah.
Congratulations to the family. I think one of the biggest takeaways I had from your short film was how insidious drugs were at that time. Like, I think there's often a perception about what background you must have come from or what your lifestyle must have been like to become a drug addict. But like you said in the short, your parents were middle class, working, doing their thing, and drugs just took over their lives to a capacity that even your mom said she never expected. You know, she's standing at the counter. She's like, how many days have even passed by? You know what I mean? So that was a big takeaway for me is just remembering how insidious drug use was at a time when, it impacted everybody's lives, no matter what economic background you may be in, any of that, you can still be harmed and impacted by it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was just so important I mean, it's a tough conversation to have too, because people may feel, like, oh, you're making us look like the way you're representing us is making us look bad, because of the drug addiction aspect of things. But I'm of the school where you tell the stories that you know. And that is the story that I lived. My mother was a very important person to me, and her, just the loss of opportunity that happened because of the addiction. I still mourn that, to be honest. But, I just really wanted to humanize this idea of what a crackhead is, because everybody had jokes about crack for like ever when I was growing up. I was so tired of it. I'm like, stop making fun of people with drug addictions. I'm all sensitive in my feelings about it. But yeah.
You touched upon this, but film has the power to spark social change. How do you see your work contributing to the broader conversation about justice, healing, and identity?
Yes, oh, that's the reason why I want to be in film is to reach people and to engage them and promote change. I was fortunate enough to work on mapping inequality, redlining in Dayton and Springfield. Think TV, PBS documentary. And it was amazing to see how much people were hungry. People were hungry for a story about redlining that people needed to understand. How did we get here? And what do we do next? To be able to start conversations like that is so important. And I really believe that film has that ability to do that.
As a Dayton native, that is a must watch, in my opinion. I sent it to my family after I watched it because, as a native, and especially growing up on the West Side, I could tell you that I what I thought and all of that, but that was my first time seeing the actual maps themselves and better understanding the direct history and Ridgewood and all of these things that preceded me. The way that the story was told and unfolded, I feel like you guys did it in such a digestible way too. That was super helpful. And then, like I said, I watched the talk back even afterwards, so I was really, really invested. But I hope that gets even more. I know it's been a while since you guys put that out. Hope it gets even more revived with everything that's going on politically at the moment, which was actually a question I wanted to ask you, particularly about that documentary after listening to the roundtable discussion. I feel like that was like 2020 happened. You guys, I think we're talking in 2022. So it had been a couple years post COVID, a couple years post George Floyd. And, there was, I think, some hope still for you guys about this is the past. Here's where, we're making progress into the future. How are you feeling right now, given the political climate about things like redlining and these steps back it feels like we're taking in our history and in our culture in America?
Absolutely. I feel that, we are living in historic times, but the times are not that dissimilar from times past, eras past, where you have a huge pendulum swing from, you know, let's say Obama's inauguration and presidency to, the result of this current administration and all the horrible things that they're trying to do and are succeeding in doing. I
It's only
feel
been 2 months.
it's only it feels like 2 years.
If only,
I
Lord
know.
Jesus.
I know it. And I think that we have to persevere. I'm part of, and this may sound a certain way, but the 92% that's like, I'm gonna fold my hands and wait and see what other people are gonna do. I know that might be very controversial to say that, but I was encouraged by the hands-off marches that took place last weekend, that there was a good turnout of people, and that the people who unfortunately voted for this administration to be in existence are out there now protesting, like, well, we need to get more of y'all out here because change isn't going to happen in a vacuum. It has to happen with people's momentum and energy, and it's going to have to be other people who've been sitting back. They're going to have to stand up because
Definitely.
we've done. I don't know what to say. You know what I mean? It's like I think about just how hard election day was. That was a really difficult day. Um,
Hmm.
and I had to go stand in front of my students and talk to them and figure out what I was going to say.
I took the day off personally.
Smart.
But
Yes.
we talk about this on the podcast. Our podcast is pop culture, but we are engaged citizens of our country. So it has come up in conversation. And it's one of those things where it's like I am constantly reminded that my ancestors have gone through worse. But this is a really interesting space to be in because we're seeing regression before our eyes. And
Yeah.
it's like, what do we do now? Like, yes, they still laugh, love, and had full lives in the midst of the craziness. And that's what I have to remind myself of daily.
Yes.
But it's like, but it's so disheartening to see the level of regression, right?
Yes.
Um, and to be targeted in this way after having an Obama and Michelle Obama in the first and the first and the first. So yeah.
And Cory Booker can't do another 25 hours for y'all. Like, to your point about other people needing to stand up and push forward, and some of those who are now saying, I regret my vote. Okay, let me see it. Let me feel it. Let me understand how you're going to help move us forward when your vote did not. So Thank you for that. I just wanted to deep dive a little bit because I think watching that, that documentary again just made me remember all the sacrifice and the work that people did before us only to find ourselves here. Like the story of one of the women and her parents and how her dad stopped working the night shift at Frigidaire so he could be at home with them at night when the KKK is coming burning crosses on their yard because they're the first Black family to move into that neighborhood, Like it gives me chills talking about, but these are the things that people before us had to be put through. And I really thought we were well past this era.
I am not I'm surprised. I'm surprised by the swiftness of things and how quickly things are changing, but I'm not surprised by the country. The country is what it is and always has been this way. And they've
Yeah.
been, polite enough at times to kind of like hang back, like, okay, give them their moment. And then next thing you know, it's like, okay, it's time to pull the rug out from underneath you and show you, who's in charge again. And I think that there's enough people out there. I'm hoping for the midterms that people will turn out and vote in numbers that will say, okay, enough is enough. And I'm an optimist. That's how I get through my day because otherwise I start to unpeel that onion and layers of just anger just start to appear.
Yeah.
And I can't live in that space, I'm
It's
in a
unsustainable.
sustainable.
We want to thrive, not just survive.
Exactly. That's
I
why joy is revolutionary, baby.
Joy
Like
is revolutionary. I think
loving
Michael
yourself is revolutionary.
I think Michael Clark spoke to a little bit, and you guys talked back too about the whole idea of, oh, just because certain things may have lessened in number, like members of Ku Klux Klan, things like that, doesn't mean those sentiments ever went away, right? And so I'm going to make sure there's a link to the Redlining documentary in the show notes, guys, because I really do think it's a must watch, and it's very, very important, again, to remember our history at a time when they're trying to erase it and remember what all we've gone through to get to where we are today. So thank you for that work. Thank you for that work.
Yeah.
You are also at the Dayton Black Women's Film Festival receiving the Gardenia Award. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
What does this honor mean to you?
Well, first, I have to shout out Angelina Mitchell, the founder and festival director of the Dayton Black Women Film Festival, because
Yes.
she's a remarkable woman, and I'm so proud to know her and see her evolution as a filmmaker, because she's also my student as well at Wright State, and see her just evolve as a woman, as an artist in this space, and being so thoughtful and just so generous with her love for Black women in cinema. And it's inspiring to me. And to be honored this year with the Gardenia Award, which is an homage to Hattie McDaniel, is
Hmm.
just it's just like I'm so humbled by it. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity, and I just hope that when Saving Jackie screens at the festival, that people will still be able to connect to it, and yeah, because I feel like that's what art does. It connects you, and I'm just, yeah, I can't say enough things about like how excited I am. And I'm a little nervous too, to be honest, but it's gonna be a good thing.
No need to be nervous. You are going to be wonderful as you have been here today. And we love Angelina. Shout out to Angelina
Yes, we
on this
do.
podcast as well. We had an in conversation with her and have not left her alone since. So
No, she's a phenomenal guest, and her enthusiasm is contagious. And we're very excited to um, be a part of such a wonderful film festival.
Absolutely.
Representation matters a lot to us, and to be able to align with the Dayton Black Women Film Festival is really exciting for us. And speaking of representation, how do you approach telling stories that center Black women lives?
My goal is to strike a chord with the humanity of Black women, that we are capable of so much, that we our stories matter, and that we're more than just the images that have been portrayed in the past. There's so much more depth and complexity that needs to be explored more. For my own personal storytelling, I I have to write with what I know, and I want to I've always wanted to see, and this is can be controversial too a little bit, like women, a female story of like boys in the hood. That's been something that I've been obsessed with since saw Boys in the Hood in the theater years ago. I wanted to have a story that told what it's like being a young Black girl in those environments, because that's what I was, and how you transcend some of the pitfalls that are designed to hold you there, and to be able to navigate around those. And through the gift of art, I feel like that was my way out. And that's the story I want to tell. I also want to tell stories about women from the Great Migration during that era, to be
Mm,
able to explore like what life was like for my grandmother, for our grandma,
Hmm.
and just the challenges that they faced, and how they managed to find joy and love and life in spite of facing racism in the North after leaving Jim Crow in the South. Those, like, I love historical pieces, period pieces, and all of my stories they don't take place in the present day, because I feel like there's something to be learned by looking back,
mm.
because it mirrors what we are experiencing now.
Have you read Warmth from Other Suns?
No, I'm writing this down.
It's from the same author who wrote Origin. The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wickerson. Yeah, phenomenal book. Both books are phenomenal. And we recapped Origin actually, which was a really phenomenal film as well, based off of this book. It's dense, I will tell you that. It's very heavy, but it talks about the epic story of Americans' Great Migration.
That sounds awesome. Thank you for that recommendation. Absolutely.
Yes.
Let's shift over to talk about self care. I read that you took up transcendental meditation during your studies at the David Lynch School of Cinematic Arts. How has that impacted you? And what else do you do, with mental, physical health to maintain, especially in the midst of your life and your work?
Oh, that's a great question. I really admire and love the fact that I had to learn transcendental meditation as part of my studies at the Maharishi International University in Iowa, Fairfield, Iowa. I gained so much peace and stillness. When I first started, I was working full time as a film accountant, and I was in grad school, and was a mother and a wife. So I had a lot of different hats to wear. And in order to keep my head on straight, meditating for 20 minutes twice a day really helped me alleviate stress. Now, I'll be honest, I have recently just picked it back up again after having a bit of an hiatus. But what it does is it centers me and it helps me stay in the moment, which is really important. That has been my goal this whole school year. This is my first year back, and I have to be fully present in order to make sure I deliver the quality education that I'm supposed to do for these students. Something that I love to do is I take my dog for a walk, my dog Prince. He's a fluffy little guy, and we walk a mile around the neighborhood, daily. And that really helps me keep my brain sharp. And I love boxing. I picked back up boxing. I had put it down for a while, but now I'm getting back into it again. And it feels really good to hit the heavy bag. Like, yes, let me get
Love
it.
it. Love it.
I am curious, is Prince from the artist or is your dog a bit of a royalty, you know?
Oh, it's 100% the artist.
Okay.
100%.
Because some dogs can have definitely the personality of a prince and a princess.
Yes, absolutely. My neighbor's dog is named Princess, and she's a bit of a princess, yes.
What's the worst career advice you've ever received, and how did you navigate past it?
Oh, wow. Ooh, you guys. The worst career advice that I've ever received was actually from my physician. I had, and this was the last time I saw him, actually. I was at the doctor and, I'm like explaining to him how I'm passionate about film because he was asking me, what am I doing with my life? And because it was a consultation. And he was saying, you should never, ever have kids, and you shouldn't even think about doing this film stuff if you want to have kids, because you can't have both. And the funny thing is, I went in there and I said, I want to get a pregnancy test just to be on the safe side. And then he had to come back in there and tell me I was pregnant and eat his words, because what was I gonna do? I was like, you know what? This is the last time I'm gonna see you. And so I figured out a way to work in the industry, travel, leave the city, leave the state for weeks on end, months on end, and still have a family. It's tough, but it's not impossible like this guy was trying to tell me it was. That was the worst career advice I've ever received, was not to have a baby, even though that's not really career, but not to have a baby and not to get into film if I do have a baby. And I proved him wrong.
Yeah. For women,
It's the
that is career.
audacity.
Yeah. For women, that is career that he's trying to speak to. I've said it so many times,
It
and it is,
absolutely is. It
yeah.
absolutely is.
One of my favorite things from Mr. Will Smith from The Pursuit of Happiness is that concept of don't ever let anybody tell you what you're capable of and what you can and can't do. People only are ever speaking from their perspective and lens of the life they've lived. They cannot see past that. So how could they possibly see what you could do?
Terribly limited for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
May that
It's the
man
audacity for me. Like,
may that
what?
man never meet someone he can influence. If
That's so
is the
real.
case.
That is so real.
Yes.
Actually, side note though, Ashley and I are both in corporate America, and one of my older friends who's now retired, but we were colleagues for many years, she was like, never have a boss that wife doesn't work, because he'll not understand, you being a wife, being a mother, juggling a career. She's like, be weary of those men. And I was like, what do you mean? And mind you, she came up in the 80s when, they were looking at her side eye for being a career woman as well in corporate America. So that stuck with me. So I understand And yeah.
Yeah.
Well, love and I told you so moment that, we will rise above. I did it. I had the baby and I had the career. So God bless.
Period.
Last question from us. What advice, now that we've heard the worst you've received, what beautiful additional advice do you have for all the listeners out there who are hoping to follow your path?
Yes, I would love to tell those people to trust themselves, trust themselves, trust themselves, love yourself, and trust yourself because you have a vision, you have a story to tell, and no one in the world can tell it but you. And you have to believe that you can tell it. And sometimes things take longer than we expect them to take, but that doesn't mean you give up. You just keep pressing in and pressing forward until you make it happen because it will happen. So that's the advice I would tell them.
Love that. Morgan Freeman didn't pop till he was 50. Remember, Delora? We found that out on
Yes,
number
we
one on the
were
call sheet.
floored. And he has been working nonstop ever since.
The Morgan Freeman. Okay. So beautiful advice. Thank you so much. Selena, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
It has been a pleasure. Guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. As I mentioned, this is the start of our series with some of the Black women filmmakers that will be at the festival. So please stay tuned for those, but share this episode out with everybody you know. We appreciate it. We'll be back. But in the meantime, as always, be blessed.
Bye.